assalamu alaikum, good morning, khushamdi, ji ayanu, goeiemorgen.
Bekhair agile, ni hao, tune shumme, washmale, ohio gonzaimes, guten morgen, hola, bonjour, privet, kaifa hal, hale shumma chatore, ahlan wa sahlan, marhaba, buna, mucho, gracias, swabia, bhalli kare hain. And everybody who's tuned into PTV World from 46 different countries. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a very good morning over here in Islamabad. In fact, a fine, superb morning over here in Islamabad. Alongside me, I have the very amazing co-host of mine, and she is Miss Shiza Hashmi, and I happen to be Shahzad Hassan Khan. Hello, Shiza. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for asking. What about you? But before that, first of all, Jummah Mubarak, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, remember Shahzad Khan and myself in your prayers, my entire team actually. You know, when you called me Shiza Hashmi this morning especially, I just felt like I didn't change my name after my marriage.
All right.
Should I?
Well, I think it's your choice.
I know, right? So the best part is, so for a long period of time, I thought that it is absolutely compulsory for a woman to change her name after the marriage.
All right.
But you know what? The religion is not forcing it on you. It gives you just, enough freedom for you to decide and choose if you do want to, take on to the name of your husband or your father, which is exciting.
I think that's a very different kind of conversation from what we planned for today. But what kind of thoughts came across your mind just last night? That's what or what kind of conversation you had with your husband? That's something which I want to ask today. Because you all of a sudden thinking about you haven't changed your name.
No,
if you feel like it, you can do that.
I know, but you just called me Shiza Hashmi and I realized that, well, that's my dad's name.
I think from tomorrow onwards or from Monday onwards, I'll actually be like Shiza Jasmine Hashmi. Is that correct? That's your full name,
That's
right?
my full name, yes, absolutely. But other than that, ladies and gentlemen, a very sad note to begin with. We have been going through this pandemic for so many months now. And unfortunately, we are into it for the second time. And it's not going anywhere, I'm telling you that. And it is not a joke anymore. We know a lot of sectors over here in the federal capital have been sealed again, of course, smart lockdown going on.
Exactly.
Not only in here in Islamabad, but so many different parts of the country as well. The government was actually thinking of shutting down again the wedding halls and restaurants and whatnot, because it is you people, us in fact. It is us who are not taking care of ourselves and abiding by the SOPs, which is absolutely so essential. Do we really want to go through all of those godforsaken months again, sorry to use these words, but I mean, it was just insane. And Shahzad, you know what, again, we happen to be the privileged ones, alhamdulillah. So even while we were working, yes, but throughout the pandemic, we had Alhamdulillah, food to, on our tables every single day. And, meals 3 times probably a day. A lot of people who lost their jobs, imagine how they were actually bringing bread to their table, or how they were actually, just making do of all the resources they had. There were some who didn't even have any resources. And access to food is one thing. People didn't even have access to medication for that matter. The picture that has been painted is really bleak. It's a little sad for us to think about all these things, but we need to talk about them. And we need to reach to solutions.
And yes, we will definitely talk about solutions as well. But ladies and gentlemen, I think over here what we need to think is that it does not really matter whether you're the privileged one or not, because Corona does not have any eyes. And Corona cannot see whether who's rich or who's poor. So if you're not going to follow these standard operating procedures, God forbid, I went through Corona myself. I went through COVID myself, 2 months ago. And I'm sure that, nobody wants to go through that feeling as well, being locked down in your room for 21 days. That's a hard task. And when I was traveling, I had to be in my room then for 14 days as well, where I was quarantined as well. But I think what is important over here is to make sure that everybody gets food on the table, that there's equity. I'm not talking about equality. I'm talking about equity over here, that everybody gets what they actually want for themselves, what is good for them as well. And I think today actually happens to be a very important day, Shahzad. Do you want to add in the first place, or do you want me to go with mine?
I actually do want to add over here. Shahzad, where you said that everyone, of course, deserves food inequity. Yes, but we're talking about food with, I want to say beneficial nutrients over here. Do you know that Pakistan, in the recent few years, actually, Pakistan produced more food than the entire population required, but still a lot of people who are living in underprivileged conditions did not receive that. Or, adding more to the stats of it, this is recent from this year as well, more than 20% of the general population is undernourished, which means even when the food that we are getting doesn't have the right kind of nutrients. And that is for the general public. Let's talk about children, especially under the age of 5. More than 45% of them are malnourished or stunted, which makes the 3rd largest stunted population in the entire world. It is just so unfortunate. But ladies and gentlemen, adding more to that, we have a small report to share with you about this particular thing that we're talking about. Today happens to be World Food Day. Absolutely. Yes. Let's take a look at it and then come back and discuss it in detail.
Let's do this. Good morning.
Somos las raíces que nutren.
每一位粮食英雄都发挥着重要作用。
Nous devons nourrir le monde.
È giunto il momento di risollevarsi.
Together, we can make a difference.
To lives and communities everywhere.
Нам нужна устойчивая продовольственная система.
لأن مصيرنا واحد.
Grow, nourish and sustain together, ladies and gentlemen. But today there's another special occasion, and that is that today actually happens to be the 75th anniversary of FAO as well. We'll be congratulating them. But very quickly, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very apt panel to discuss about World Food Day. Yes. And what about those countries where, you know, children are actually dying of not having food? I think everybody needs to come together, because this is something, God forbid, if you're hungry, you know what kind of animal you feel as well. Imagine that people not getting food for, you know, days and days. I think everybody needs to work together. There are 150 countries coming together on this day as well, and making sure that each and everyone gets food to eat, which will actually benefit their health as well. So ladies and gentlemen, to talk about that, we're very lucky that we've once again been joined by the chairman PARC. He happens to be Dr. Muhammad Azim Khan Sahab. Hello sir, Assalamu alaikum, good morning.
Walaikum salam.
Welcome back.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for joining us. Alongside Dr. Muhammad Azim Khan Sahab, ladies and gentlemen, we have been joined by the country representative of FAO. She is Meena Daulat Shahi. Hello, Assalamu alaikum, good morning and congratulations.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum to you.
Walaikum assalam. Thank you very much for joining us. Alongside her, ladies and gentlemen, we've actually been joined by the representative of Country Director WFP, who's actually been awarded by the Nobel Peace Prize as well. Ladies and gentlemen, he is Mr. Chris K. Hello, assalamu alaikum, good morning.
Assalamu alaikum, thank you very much for having me.
Walaikum assalam, thank you very much for joining us. And last but not the least, ladies and gentlemen, earlier we actually used to be joined by Mr. Kazal Barsh as well, but he's not here today. But since he's not here, he's actually made sure that somebody's actually going to represent OXFAM over here. He happens to be the country director. He is Mr. Sayyid Shahnawaz Ali. Assalamu alaikum, good morning.
Assalamu alaikum ji.
Thank you very much for joining us, everybody. And before we actually indulge in any kind of conversation, we have a small report on World Food Day as well, which we want to share with all our viewers out there in 46 different countries. Please go ahead and take a look.
Let's do it.
Food Day is an international day observed every year around the world on 16 October in honor to the date of the founding the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. World Food Day calls for global solidarity to help all populations, especially the most vulnerable, to recover from the crisis and build back better to improve food systems. An essential part of this will be sustainable agricultural practices that preserve natural resources and the climate. It's never only about the quantity of the food, but also the quality of the food being produced that is important. A balanced diet is essential to help vulnerable families as the world continues efforts to contain COVID-19. Access to safe and nutritious food must form an essential part of this response. This is especially vital for the world's most poor and vulnerable communities, who have been the hardest hit by the economic shocks brought by COVID-19. World Food Day is commemorated annually and promotes global awareness and action for those who suffer from hunger and the need to ensure healthy diet for all.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this was our initiative of making sure that everybody out there understands what Food Day is all about. But very quickly now, I think what we need to do is that we need to indulge ourselves into conversation.
Let's do it.
And let's see where it leads us as well, and where it's going to lead the world, because 150 nations are going to come together today, ladies and gentlemen. It's an important day, and I think everybody needs to work in this direction. So Ms. Meena Daulat Shahi, please let us know about this day, the importance of this day. What significance do you have in your mind? How do you want FAO to highlight this day, and what is the theme, and how do we want to go about it?
Well, thank you very much. This is an important day. It is one day, comes once a year, and it is an opportunity to remind ourselves and everybody that food is a fundamental right for all.
Absolutely.
But today, food is a right, but the access to food, there are inequalities, and even in the quality, there are differences. So it's the 75th anniversary of FAO. FAO was founded right after World War II. And it was because the decision of more than 48 countries at the time, but now today they have become 195, decided that eradicating hunger was one of the highest objectives of all the member nations.
All right.
But where are we today? Now, you've given a little bit of an overview. I think about more than 20% of population is undernourished.
Yeah.
Now, it's actually, the numbers are on the rise because of the impact of COVID-19.
Yeah.
And this is in the State of Food Security in the World flagship report that the UN prepares together with FAO, WFP, UNICEF, and WHO. So what does this mean? Well, this means that we're not there yet, but there's more food, exactly like you mentioned in Pakistan. There's more food produced, but there's still hunger.
Yeah.
So there is an issue about how do we get the food to those that need it and in a way that is equally good for all. That is, that it is diversified, that it is safe, that it is stable in time, and that it is enough also.
Yes.
And enough for each human being, depending at the phase where it is, because a child will have different needs than somebody who is already above 65 years old.
Exactly. Agreed.
And a pregnant woman will have much more needs than another person in equal age, but not in this condition. So this is the big equation. Now, what we have learned with COVID, COVID, as you said, has been very sad. It's been disruptive. It's a pandemic. It affects the whole world. But if we, for a moment, look into also Pakistan, Pakistan has managed something. It's not good enough, but this is where one could start thinking on how to do things better.
Okay.
It has managed, because the production in Pakistan of food, in particular those that come from the agriculture sector, including fishery, forestry, and livestock, is largely produced through smallholder farmers, men and women.
Okay.
You have a large majority of women working in agriculture.
Exactly.
Yes.
I think it's about 58%
Oh, is it?
of all the workforce, yes. But imagine that more than 75% of these women are not paid.
Exactly.
But they work. So they are food heroes.
Yeah.
But how do we make their conditions better so they can access more food for their livelihoods? How can they paid? How can they get the knowledge to improve what they're doing, to increase the productivity? And this is also for the men.
Absolutely.
It's not just for the women.
It's a larger discussion.
And the
definitely.
element that is very interesting is that in Pakistan, we have seen during the lockdowns small, short, informal, what we call supply chains.
Yeah.
Like from the farmers and then somebody with a little truck and then taking the food to some close by market.
Okay.
So it means it reduces the distance between the production and the consumer. The farm to fork becomes smaller. It becomes more resilient. It becomes less exposed to shocks.
Which is a good thing.
It is a very good thing.
Okay.
Now, how to make this work in a way that it brings also food to those who need and that there's no wastage.
And we will come back to that. You have to hold on to that thought as well, because I'll move on to Chris Kay over here. And you're representing World Food Programme. So I think nobody else can actually answer this question better. Where are we in terms of when we talk about hunger all over the world? What kind of food programs have been introduced? Where are we if we talk about SDGs as well? And I think that all of these things need to come together so that we make sure. And how many years do you think any organization would require to come together with other nations to make sure that there's no hunger in the world?
And sorry, Chris, I'm just going to add to this because it's a...
He always does that.
It's a complementary question. So the WFP stated, this was after the pandemic, and then our premier, of course, in his speech at the UNGA spoke about it as well. When we're talking about food insecurity, WFP predicted that in countries like Yemen and Syria, around 600,000 people are expected to die of hunger due to the pandemic, and this is not before that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the stats and how should we go about that actually? Do we have a part to play as individuals or as Pakistanis?
Yeah,
Well,
let's
thank
wait
you.
for the answer now.
Yes, exactly. Shazad, and Shazad, thank you so much. I mean, there's a lot of questions.
Oh, sorry.
And
We just
yeah, a little bit overwhelming, I
overwhelmed.
think, in many respects, because the problem is in itself overwhelming.
It is.
And the stats are going the wrong direction. We had seen some progress in terms of the numbers of people who were being reported as food insecure up until a couple of years ago. And sadly, that progression is now being reversed.
Okay.
And why is it being reversed? Well, we've touched on a couple of reasons. Certainly, COVID, of course, is having a horrific impact. And you're right in referencing our Executive Director, David Beasley, who has spoken at the Security Council on this very issue, bringing the attention of the world to the fact that because of COVID, we will increase from 135 million people who are on the brink of starvation to potentially a further 130 million in addition. You know, that's the entire population of the United States of America who are in a situation of starvation around the world. And it's unconscionable in a world of plenty. Now, you ask about whether we're going to meet the 2030 zero hunger target. Again, our Executive Director, and I think it's been reiterated numerous times by the Secretary General, we will not reach that target as long as there are war around the world. And that's our biggest challenge, certainly as the World Food Programme. We are very much focused on providing food assistance to people who are affected by conflict, who are affected by natural disasters in emergency situations. And you know, the demand for our services are on the way up, for sure. We provided 100 million people with food assistance in 80 countries during the course of last year.
80 countries.
Yeah. Wow, brilliant, brilliant.
But you know, the requirement will be even more in 2021 for sure.
Of course.
And you know, the challenge is that as a United Nations organisation that is voluntary funded, i.e., you know, we're out there with our tin. You know, there doesn't seem to be the money to be able to provide for us to be able to meet those needs, and that's a real challenge. And it's a bit of a travesty, I think, in a world where there is so much investment income that is being parked away by private investors. You know, you wonder, wouldn't it be possible to be able to move some of that money to be able to help the world's hungry? That's the challenge, I think, that we face, because we have very generous donors, for sure. But it is time that I think the world at large has an opportunity now to step up and to meet the challenge of world hunger. And it's days like today which give us the opportunity to really give attention to that.
And we hope that every nation can actually come together as well and do so as well. But just one humble question, and that is, why do you think that this disparity exists among nations as well, where we talk about people being very literally hungry or probably, you know, leading to starvation, and then at the same time we have a larger number of people who can actually feed themselves probably for the rest of their lives as well? Why do we have this disparity?
It's the oldest story in the world.
Well, yeah, I mean, income disparity is a structural issue that doesn't just affect the availability of food.
Is food directly related to income in the first place?
Of course.
Of course, right. So while we will definitely again talk about that in detail, I want to move on to you. You being the country director, first of all, I think we need to identify, because we're also taking this day to celebrate actually all the people and the stakeholders involved in the food chain, and then, you know, the food process actually, right?
There are food heroes.
Food heroes, yes. So can you identify people who are a part of this food process? Like you mentioned, there are women and men who are working as farmers. Please go ahead.
Or policy loopholes.
Yeah.
Yep. You know, today I want to be the voice of small scale farmers and the daily wage workers that are associated with it. We don't know what kind of conditions they go through to ensure that food is available on our tables. Let's take example of rice field. Farmers over there, they mostly are have really mechanized their kind of farming, which has really directly affected the laborers that used to work over there. Now the only opportunity left for those daily wagers is transplanting, and that happens in July, extremely harsh conditions.
Absolutely.
And women traditionally are known to be the best transplanters, and as Meena mentioned, that the percentage is quite high. Now, if you imagine yourself in those conditions, there is a risk of fainting, there's a risk of falling unconscious. They leave their kids behind, nobody to care about it. Yeah. There is also a problem that, you know, the water is mostly standing when they are transplanting, so there is risk of injuries, of glass coming in, the insect bites and all that. And the facilities around there are not good enough.
Yes.
OXFAM has always been the voice of such people. We have organized grower organizations that have ensured the participation of women, so that there is that more control on the distribution of income. Okay. We've also invested a lot on ensuring the productivity and the yield increases. We get into practices that are more safe, and I'm sure, like today we have emphasized a lot about COVID, but we have forgot about climate change. Exactly. Because as a country we are vulnerable. We ranked 7th on the list of nations that are
even though we're not the contributor, but
and we are not the contributor.
Yes.
So from that aspect, there is also a need that we not only diversify our livelihood options, but also we maintain and sustain this agricultural based economy.
Which is why I'm going to move on to Dr. Mohammad Azim Khan Sahab now, because we were talking about diversifying, we're talking about finding new opportunities, we're talking about innovation as well. Now, Dr. Sahab, I have a very interesting question for you. You know, so within a year's time, you know, I traveled 2 or 3 countries, probably UK every year, you know, because my sister and my entire family is there. But as soon as I land over there, in the next 15 days, I actually gained 2-3 kgs, and it's because of the food I eat over there. I'm being very honest over here, and the food is organic and it's healthy. And whenever you take a bite, you know that you're getting healthier every day. I feel stronger. You know, if today I have an apple over there, the next and I do 50 push-ups, next day I'm doing 52. That's how it is. But not just that. Okay, that's one thing. Why do you think our food is not healthy over here? Number 2 is that whichever developed country you go to, you see that people who actually own, for example, 6 acres of land, and they have 6 tons of yield, probably in every season. Imagine what they've done is that they've reduced their manpower, they have introduced newer technologies, and now they probably have 10 tons of yield within that same land. Where are we on this? Are we even working in this direction? Are we even talking about technological integration within the farming system as well?
That's a very important question, and I think on World Food Day, this type of question must be asked. And I will start from a positive note, although you see there is a lot of negativity. Positivity is that in Pakistan there are still many regions where we are producing organically. Okay. I want to tell you, almost in whole Balochistan, lot of fruits, lot of you see cereal they are produced under organic condition because of you see the drought condition prevailing there. Similarly, in our Thal area, this gram is absolutely produced organically. If you just go to the hilly areas, mountainous areas, you will find that walnut, almond, many fruits, they are produced organically. Exactly. So, a lot of things. Whereas I accept, I fully understand as well, and fully acknowledge and understand that in areas from where our major food is coming, it is mainly irrigated areas, and Punjab is contributing hugely, maybe 80%, and then other provinces. And in those regions, we started relying heavily on chemicals, chemical use, including fertilizers and pesticide, and also a lot of food, particularly high-value food, vegetable, they are produced in peri-urban settings. And we know that we could not manage urban wastewater properly, and that water is being used for the production of these commodities. So these are the factors that are contributing, and FAO, historically we very closely worked with FAO, and educated farmers in using, in increasing, getting higher productivity as well as using chemical rationally. It's a very huge program, very successful program we were running in Pakistan from 2000 onward. A lot of farmers were educated. Still FAO is supporting those communities who are being trained under that project. So there are opportunities and there are no solutions. And in my organization called Pakistan Agriculture Research Council, we are now producing alternatives, alternative fertilizers, biofertilizers, bioazotes, similarly biocompost. So many products at commercial scale. Previously, it was only at experimental scale.
Are they being used as well by the farmers?
These are being used at a quite larger scale now. We are also entered into a public-private partnership where these products, because previously these products were not produced at a scale where at level where it is demanded. So to fulfill that demand, we have now included private sector through our company, and they are now multiplying these, including compost, including biofertilizers, and they will be having their own distribution system, because it is not possible for the public sector organization. They can do research, they can develop products, but if you expect that they will be also supplying to at grassroots level to the farmer, that will be over expectation.
That is brilliant.
Wonderful. And sir, the next question which I'm going to pose to you, I'm very sorry, just before the break, I'm not very sure whether this is your area or forte as well, but I'm still going to ask you as well. Just yesterday while we were on the program, you know, we actually had somebody who happens to be the president of the Farmer Association Punjab, and he wasn't, I think he was about to cry, but he didn't, and he said that, you know, that the farmer who actually grows the entire kind of food for all of us does not actually even get to eat enough. So imagine on World Food Day, where we talk about food or probably hunger or starvation, the man or the woman who grows for us does not even get enough to eat for themselves. Is it the middleman? What kind of reforms do we really need to introduce? And not just over in Pakistan, there are several other countries where the same thing is happening.
Yeah.
I think, again, in a very important area, and we should accept that. In terms of market infrastructure, we really badly failed. It's a market failure. It is not failure on the part of the farmers. Farmers are working very hard. And one can imagine that, you see, I just estimated a few days back that in the last 30 years, how much the research system through their technologies and the farmer with their hard work has contributed towards in food production. I found that in major food commodities, in this time period, the growth was 30 to 40%. In many, it might have been at 100%, but anyway, a sizable growth has been achieved. But the problem is that when the farmers harvest, we could not help him when he is harvesting with proper machinery. Lot of losses happen at harvesting time, and when he want to, after he just have a harvest, he don't have storage facilities. He cannot hold with his product, and that at that time market really exploit farmers. And whosoever is want to get benefit, you can see the case of wheat from the farmers purchased in 1,350 rupees. Maximum was that. I know, personally know that. I myself sold at that price. But now it is available at 2,000, 2,200. You can imagine from this case that you see what farmers gets. And in case of perishable, the return to farmers are very, very low, because exploitation element increases when you are dealing with a perishable commodities.
And I think that's one reason why they're still not able to, you know, integrate technology into the farming techniques as well, because they do not have any money.
Yeah, and Shazad, if you look at the fact that we are an agrarian society, right, quite a large percentage of our GDP is actually generated through
26%.
all these 26% through all these activities. So I mean, really, farmers should be the one having a quality lifestyle. We need to talk about that. But also, you know, how we say that Pakistan is actually resourceful. It produces a lot of amazing food, but again, disparity remains. It's not only Pakistan specific, happens all over the world.
There's one more thing to it as well.
Okay.
For whatever kind of food we produce, the best quality, I think, is exported. It's not even used within Pakistan. So where are we heading?
So this is what I was going to say. And sir, you mentioned how in Balochistan, in Balochistan, you know, some amazing fruits and vegetables, whatnot. And I was just reading, this was last year when droughts hit Balochistan and you know other parts as well. Approximately 5 million people did not have enough food to, well, actually have throughout the day as well. Now, these are some of the things we need to talk about. Are there reforms? Is there lack of implementation? Is there lack of awareness? But right after this very short break, ladies and gentlemen, it's a fruitful discussion. Stay tuned. Good morning. Good morning.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for everybody who just got tuned into PTV World. You watching World this morning alongside the very fantastic Shiza Hashmi and Shahzad Khan. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we actually gather together. Well, in fact, gather is being together as well. And we talk about World Food Day, where we know, ladies and gentlemen, that the situation is very bleak. Not all over the world, but there are different parts or different subcontinents where we really need to put more focus on as well. But right now, we actually have a small report by World Food Program. We want to share that with you, and then once you will come back after that report, Mr. Chris K will actually speak his heart out. Let's see what he has to say. Ladies and gentlemen, these were all the figures which really did make us very happy about. 690 million people going to bed hungry. Imagine, I still think of a night where I was hungry and I had to go to bed. I couldn't even sleep, and that's me being honest. So, Mr. Chris, I think it's about time that we talk about solutions, suggestions, recommendations. Please go ahead.
Well, thanks. You know, that little video I think was important, but you know, it has quite a strong Western orientation. Okay. The food wastage in the West is outrageous. You know, you look at the amount of food that is being shipped out at the back end of a hotel or restaurants at the end of the day. You know, it's really, really frightening, and particularly for those of us who are working in countries where you know how many people are going to bed hungry. Yeah. So, moving away a little bit from that orientation, you know, what is it that we can do perhaps more locally? And I think it does come back to a little bit of what my colleagues, the fellow panelists have been saying, which is, you know, to improve the diversification of food production at a local level, to enable communities to reap the benefits of that local production, that we can do a better job in terms of managing the food that is produced, to making sure that food isn't wasted, that it is managed effectively from the field all the way through to the market and onto people's plates. There's an awful lot of very simple things that can be done in terms of storage and a more effective logistics work that certainly that's something that WFP is very adept at understanding. We move huge amounts, millions of tons of food around the world. But being able to manage that and to use that capability and that technical capacity at a local level is really what we're about here in Pakistan.
Wow. Okay, just one more thing though, since you talked about how there are of course generous donors and then a huge amount of food going to places where needed. It's going to become a little political, but I do need an answer from some official. There are, we recently also saw news of how some countries wouldn't allow food programs to reach the underprivileged ones or the people in need for so many reasons. So if, let's say, people in Yemen, or let's talk about Syria, if, the occupation forces are not allowing WFP to go there with the food trucks, isn't it a humanitarian issue anymore? How will you make sure that those unfortunate humans still do get food?
Yeah, this is the whole issue of the use of food as a weapon of war. And it really is. It's disgusting that that happens still today, but unfortunately it does. And you're right. We see it in Yemen. We see it in Syria. We see it in many other countries where there is conflict. And this is the reality for us. We realize how important food is as a way of being able to build peace, build the conditions for peace. True. If if your child, your son, if your daughter is hungry, you're going to fight. to ensure that that child gets the food that it needs.
Yes.
So it's a vital ingredient to achieving peace. WFP is absolutely 100% committed to being able to negotiate the access.
Yes.
You know, really, we leave no stone unturned to ensure that access is possible for those people who are caught up in conflict. And I think, frankly, that's one of the reasons that we've been successful and we've been recognised with recently with the Nobel Peace Prize.
Wonderful. So very quickly, because ladies and gentlemen, we only left with last 5 minutes as well, so we'll focus on solutions more and more as well. So let me move on to Mr. Sage Nawaz Ali Sahab as well. Whatever solutions you have, please go ahead.
You know, solutions I'll emphasize on two particular elements in our society. One is youth, which is 63% of population. 61% unemployed. Majority of, like 48% of the women among our youth are not actively searching for jobs, and we have to look for opportunities on how do we collaborate and how do we engage with them. So there is a role that universities can play here by bringing innovation technologies into improving our productivity and lifestyle of the farmers. The second aspect, that government has done their bit by having food security policy in place, but the implementation of that food security policy is an area which is missing. We need to find out opportunities and incentives for small scale
But that's
farmers.
something which is always left out. You know, we always come down to speaking about policy making, and then we say that, you know, we do have the policy, but the implementation is not there. And I think this is a dilemma with Pakistan, unfortunately. I'm sorry, but you know, it just comes out naturally. I mean, how many times are we going to listen it from panelists? You know, I think it's been 7 years that we're over here, and every now and then this is what we get to hear. Oh, the policy is in place, but it's the implementation. So what's the point of making a policy when there's not going to be any implementation?
So question being, who are the people responsible for implementation? And like you mentioned, the youth,
so
how can individually we become active, you know, we can be active in this matter in terms of implementation?
You know, it's all about realizing that it's a job that cannot be done by a single actor.
Okay.
It's not only government's job. We have to collectively participate. Private sector that sometimes are paying for the profits of the small scale farmers. They have to also identify ways that the quality of food improves from that perspective, and the profit share reaches directly without having the involvement of the middleman in the process. Secondly, we have to make our environment really feasible. One point just came to my mind, that the alternative modalities for utilizing the remains of, let's say, husk in the rice field can be an opportunity for women to engage in. They can prepare bran oil from it, they can make trays for eggs out of it, and that will definitely increase the income at that level. So these kind of things should be included in the policies and plans, and more investment from private sector and players like us sitting today here can be made.
Exactly, wonderful. So let's move on to Ms. Meena Daulat Shahi as well. Let's see, what do you think is the way forward for more than 195 countries now?
So what we touched on and WFP explained, one is conflict. So it is important to have in the world stability and to work on stability. Now, one of the elements is, of course, there's political aspects, but there's also socioeconomic aspects. And this is a fundamental piece. In fact, the FAO Director General Qu Dongju, also speaking at Security Council and General Assembly, was putting this on the plate. And it is very important, therefore, that programs that help resilience and stabilization are set forward. So, for example, FAO has developed a COVID-19 response and resilience program. It has 7 components. It includes trade, it includes smallholder farmers, but it includes also something which is very important. And as we are here talking about 46 countries, it is also cross-country collaboration and exchange. So hand in hand is important, that this goes beyond national boundaries, because what we've seen is otherwise countries default to, for example, protectionist policies, and this is not helping. So there needs to be better integration. There needs to be focus on smallholder farmers, and FAO is a technical agency, and as such we've developed many programs. We work in 131 countries, 145 countries, and there's many programs which are extremely successful. But then what do you do? Because we can only do to demonstrate, to work together to find the solutions. So what is important is exactly what my colleagues were saying here, the other esteemed panelists. You need to have others come in. It's not a one-person job. You need to have the whole society contribute. The private sector needs to get out of a very simple, only profit-based. We need to consider that we are in a moment where climate change is bringing more disasters and how we adapt to it. And this requires also a change around how profit is made by private sector, and it requires engagement of civil society and, of course, targeted, designed investments.
So, and you know, we talk about politics and economics about this whole scene on the table as well, but we totally ignore the debate of, you know, compassion and empathy among people or individuals themselves. This is where it comes in, right? Where you say that if individually we have to be responsible for all the millions of people going to sleep, you know, in hunger without food, we have to feel for them, first of all, to actually move any way forward.
And, you know, moving on to Dr. Mohammed Saab, because you'll be wrapping the show up for us as well. But, sir, what I want you to do is, I mean, this is just a humble suggestion. And that is that, you know, the world has been speaking about women empowerment. The world has made sure that to empower women, they'll actually have to give them some skill sets. They'll actually have to give them or provide them with a facility and a platform as well. Don't you think, even though that it might not be in your capacity, but somebody who happens to be the chairman of the Pakistan Agricultural Research Council, don't you think that you can run a program for farmers' empowerment?
No. Again, a very important area, and I think in our setting, in our programs, this element is very much emphasized. And because technologies you cannot transfer, there are many technologies, those are very demanding in terms of skills. So skill development, understanding how to really understand that technology and then properly using that technology for their own benefit, for enhancing productivity. Even skills are very important to produce safe and healthy food as well. And women can play a very marvelous role because in many, although in total or on average, women role is also very high. But because they deal with the food at home, so if we train them appropriately for using available technologies and develop skills among them, train them, then there is a possibility that, a great possibility that we will be, as a result, having healthier and better and higher, more food.
Is PRC willing to train them?
We are willing to train. Wonderful. And one more thing I would just want to mention, that the present government has really allocated almost 278 billion rupees and productivity enhancement program, and PRC is also part of those programs. Under those programs, we will implement those programs properly. There is a hope that there will be increased productivity, higher production we will achieve, and then definitely that will affect food prices.
But I hope it's not, you know, that the quantity is not going to take over the quality aspect of it as well, because that's what we talked about today. Yeah, all right. So that's great. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us on such a special day as well. And congratulations to OXFAM, congratulations to FAO, congratulations to WFP, and congratulations to PRC for joining and making sure that everybody is going to come over here, join hands together, and raise awareness amongst people and how we can actually play our roles.
Yeah, absolutely. This was really informative, and I think this must create an impact, if not, of course, on a societal level, on your minds at least. But today, Shahzad, also happens to be another important day in the history of Pakistan.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it actually happens to be the 69th death anniversary of the first Prime Minister of Islamic Republic of Pakistan, Mr. Liaquat Ali Khan Sahab. And I think that, you know, there's a reason why we're sharing it with you as well. First, obviously, it's of national importance. Second, I think that this is the kind of leadership we've always wanted for Pakistan. These are the people who gave us the Pakistan we actually live in now. And there's only one question, and that is, are we actually in line with the aspirations of these amazing leaders, or are we not? Ask yourself.
Well, this was something actually really deep to end the show on. But if you do have any questions regarding what we talked about today, or how you can contribute, or how actually you can make a change, you can write to us on our Facebook page with the name of?
With the name of World This Morning on your television screens down below. It's here.
Yes, on Twitter.
On Twitter, it's World This Morning.
Without a G. Yeah, you're absolutely right. On YouTube.
On YouTube, ladies and gentlemen, you look for PTV World and then you search for the most viewed morning show on PTV World, which is World This Morning. Shukr Alhamdulillah.
And the repeat of this show you can catch.
And the repeat will be at 5 past midnight. Until the next time, look after yourselves. It happens to be Friday. Please make sure that you remember each and every one in your prayers. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. Follow all the SOPs. We do not want a second wave. I still want to go back to the gym. I don't want the gym to actually go under lockdown. Please, ladies and gentlemen, make sure that everybody fulfills their responsibility as a good citizen.
Good morning. Stay safe. Stay home.